Good morning. Let's read our History of the Filipino People book by Agoncillo and Guerrero. Continuation ito guys. Puro lang tayo continuation kasi nga buong libro yung babasahin natin. Okay. Kaya may mga libro ng dyan ng panahon pa na ating college days guys. Buksan nyo na. Part 2 na tayo, Before the Conquest. Basa. Before the conquest, the tradition of the Philippine history writing which the Spanish chroniclers originated and which American and Filipino writers followed later had the Spaniards, more specifically Ferdinand Magellan, discovered the Philippines. The obvious implication is that the Philippines, or more accurately the archipelago later called the Philippines, was unknown to all. However, archaeological records and narrative written by Chinese officials, including those written by Muslim scholars, point to the early relation of the Philippines with neighboring countries. But these records, written or floating, are not sufficiently numerous to form a continuous and meaningful narrative of Philippine history before the coming of the Spaniards. Even so, the records are in themselves clear proofs of the existence of a civilization which had an oriental texture, peopling of the Philippines. Up to the early 1970s, it had been assumed that the Philippines was a part of mainland China. It was theorized that during the Pleistocene or Ice Age, the water surrounding what is now the Philippines fell about 156 feet below the present levels. As a result, a vast area of land was exposed and became a sort of land bridges to the mainland of Asia. In February 1976, however, this theory of the land bridges to Asia was disputed by Dr. Fridtjof Buss, a German scientist who studied the geology of the Philippines. According to Dr. Buss, the Philippines was never a part of the mainland of Asia, but that it rose from the bottom of the sea and continues to rise as the thin Pacific crust moves below it. As proof that the Philippines was never a part of the Asian mainland, Dr. Buss points to the fact that when scientific studies were done in 1964-67 on the thickness of the Earth's crust, it was found out that the 35-kilometer thick crust underneath China does not extend to the Philippines, since the latter could not have been a port or land bridge to the mainland of Asia. On the other hand, the Philippines lies along the great earth faults extending to deep undersea trenches, and so through violent earthquakes, what is now the Philippines rose to the surface of the sea. Whatever the cause of the Philippines coming to the Whatever the cause of the Philippines coming to the surface of the sea, it is certain that ancient men came to settle in it. The widely accepted theory that the Negritos were the aborigines of the Philippines is now severely criticized in anthropologically literature quarters. The young Filipino anthropologist Eflanda Jocano of the University of the Philippines disputes Professor H. Otley Bayer's assumption that the Malays migrated to the Philippines and now constitute the largest portion of the population. It was also Bayer who theorized that the present Filipinos had a Malayan culture. Jocano, on the other hand, believes that fossil evidences of ancient men show that they came not only to the Philippines but to New Guinea, Java, Borneo, and Australia, and that there is no way of telling whether or not they were Negritos. But whether they were Negritos or not is not of great moment. What concerns us is that there is a positive proof that man was in the Philippines at least as early as 21,000 or 22,000 years ago. The discovery in a Tabon cave in Palawan in 1962 of a skull cap and a portion of a jaw presumed to be those of a human being used conclusively conclusively that man came earlier to the Philippines than to the Malay Peninsula, where, according to the old theory, the Filipinos came from. As to the present Filipinos, Indonesians, and Malays of Malaysia, Jokano maintains that they are the end results of both the long process of evolution and the later movements of people. They stand co-equal as ethnic groups without any one being the dominant group racially or culturally. Culturally, it is likewise erroneous to state that Filipino culture is Malay in orientation. Even our historical experiences and social organization differ from those of the people identified as Malays. The differences, according to Jokano, are due to the differences in their responses to their environment. On the other hand, the similarities found among them are due to the adjustment to their environment. Summarizing his findings, Jokano maintains that, number 1, the peoples of prehistoric island Southeast Asia belonged to the same population. It grew out of the combination of human evolution which occurred in island Southeast Asia about 1.9 million years ago, as evidenced as the fossil materials recovered from different parts of the region and of the movements of other peoples from Asia mainland during historic times. Number 2. This core population shared a common cultural orientation that included both flake and core implements and their complex ceramics industries. Other shared cultural elements consist of similar ornaments, pendants, house types, belief systems, ritual complex, and funerary practices. Number 3. The configuration of these shared elements into a common way of life is what we call the base culture. It emerged from similar responses people made to similar geographic conditions, climate, fauna, and flora. None of these ancient men could be categorized under any of the historically identified ethnic groups. Example, Malays, Indonesians, Filipinos today. The Western colonizers were the ones who fragmented the population into ethnic groups as they partitioned the region into their respective colonies. The British popularized in scholarship the term Malay to characterize the group of people they encountered in the Malay Peninsula. The Portuguese, the Germans, and the Dutch introduced the Indonesians to the Western world. The Spaniards strongly worked for the conversion of Filipinos, primarily Indios, to Christianity. Indios pala ang original. To Christianity. Later on, the American came and further differentiated the Filipinos from their Southeast Asian cousins. The explanation of the peopling of the Philippines through a series of waves of migration, as documented by folk history like the Maragtas, has to be reconsidered. The undue credit given to the Malays as the original settlers of the region and dominant cultural transmitter must be corrected. Emerging from common population with the same base culture, the Malays, the Filipinos, and Indonesians are co-equal as ethnic groups in the region of island Southeast Asia, without any one of them being racially or culturally dominant. Introduction of Islam. The spread of Islam to Old Malaysia was brought about by the activities of the Arab traders, missionaries, and teachers who introduced their religious beliefs among the Malays. The foundation of Islam was laid in Malaysia by the Arabian scholar Mudum, who arrived in the Malay Peninsula about the middle of the 14th century. He succeeded in establishing in Malacca a rather tenuous foothold for Islam. About 1380, he proceeded to Sulu and preached the doctrines of Muhammad. In 1390, Raja Baginda, one of the Peter rulers of Wait lang guys. Mahirap na kasi ito na siya sa sobrang kalumaan ba. Ang hirap na tanggalin sa bawat pages. Okay. Rulers of Minangkabau, Sumatra arrived in Sulu and promptly converted some of the natives to Islam. His religious activities were followed by Abu Bakr, who about 1450 left Palembang for Sulu. He married Raja Bagindo's daughter Para Misuli. After Bagindo's death, Abu Bakr exercised his powers as sultan and established a government patterned after the Sultanate of Arabia. Islam spread rapid to all parts of Sulu. Ayan guys, mayayaman talaga sila nung araw. Tingnan mo naman, puro mga sultan yan. In Mindanao, Serif Kabungsuan, who had meanwhile arrived from Johore with his men, immediately began laying the foundations of Islam. Ulit guys In Mindanao, Serif Kabungsuan, who had meanwhile arrived from Johore with his men, immediately began laying the foundations of Islam. He converted many tribes to his religion, and having married into an influential family, made himself the first Sultan of Mindanao. So, ang original talaga guys, mga nakatara dyan, puro mga sultan yan. So, mayayaman yan. From then on, Islam spread rapidly to the Visayas and Luzon. The arrival of the Spaniards in the second half of the 16th century and the subsequent conquest of Luzon led the Muslims to retreat to the south, where they maintained their independence from foreign powers to the end of the Spanish regime. Relations with the Orang Dampuans. Between 900 and 1280, another group of immigrants came to Philippines from southern Annam, known as Orang Dampuans, or men from Champa. They established trading posts in Sulu, resulting in a flourishing trade between Sulu and southern Annam. The Orang Dampuans were not politically minded and had no intention of dominating the people of Sulu, who were called Buranons. Their interest lay in trade, as usually happened. The Orang Dampuans, because of their increasing prosperity, aroused the jealousy of the Buranons, who, in a fit of anger, massacred some Orang Dampuans. The latter had superior weapons, took their bloody revenge on the Buranons, and having leveled the enemy's villages to the ground, sought to their homeland. It was not until the 13th century that the Orang Dampuans returned to Sulu to trade peacefully with the natives. Relations with Banjarmasin. The fame of Sulu reached as far as northern Borneo and soon Banjarmasin and Brunei. Two of the important sub-states of the Empire of Srivijaya sent traders to Sulu. The latter's famous pearl beads drew the interest of the Banjarmasin merchants and adventurers. Thus, regular trade relations were established. Guys, pakinggan nyo ito mabuti. Part of Sulu na ito. The latter's famous pearl beads drew the interest of the Banjarmasin merchants and adventurers. Thus, regular trade relations were established between the people of Sulu and the men of Banjar, as the men of Banjarmasin were called. The Buranons looked with suspicion at the men of Banjar, for they had not forgotten their tragic experience with the Orang Dampuans. But the men of Banjar, more diplomatic than their predecessors, knew how to assuage the wounded pride of the Buranons. Realizing the power of a beautiful woman to soften the heart of a hostile ruler, the men of Banjar brought their beautiful princess to Sulu. She was offered to a Buranon ruler, who did not need a second look to decide that the princess was fit to be his queen. Sulu thus came under the influence of Banjarmasin, and in no time the Buranons found themselves willing tribute payers to Banjarmasin. With Sulu now under their thumb, the men of Banjar sent more adventurers and traders to Sulu until, as time went on, the Buranons were slowly pressured into the hinterland, leaving the coast to the wealthy men of Banjar. Under the latter, Sulu developed into an emporium, and trading ships bound and trading ships from Cambodia. Okay. Yung mata ko guys, hindi na gano'n. Okay, Cambodia, China, Java, and Sumatra cast anchor and salutports sa border Walt and Splinter. So, hanggang dito lang muna tayo guys. Bukas na yun. Wait, idugtog ko lang itong para bukas dito na tayo sa another topic. Okay. Cast anchor at salutports sa border Walt and Splinter from the union of the Boronan chieftain and the Banjarmasin princes came the rulers of Sulu. For many years thereafter, Sulu remained under the influence of Banjarmasin. So bukas guys, relations with China na tayo. Bye everyone, God bless.